I'm Deanna Fritvinson, Economic Development Coordinator, Officer, Advisor for the East Interlake region. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Brandon. Our office is located in Brandon on Treaty 2 lands, the traditional homeland of the Dakota, Anishinaabeg, Oji-Cree, Cree, Dene, and Métis peoples. However, our team will be working extensively throughout Manitoba in the lens of Treaties 1 through 4 and the southern portion of Treaty 5. ARMID respects the treaties that were made on these lands, where we will work together. We commit to reconciliation along the path of economic prosperity. Our timeline today is 1 hour. So if you're interested in putting your name and location in the chat box, I'd appreciate that, or virtually raise your hand if you have questions. If you're bumped off the call, please log back in with the initial link provided. And I just wanted to also make note that our guests today from the panel have put their name and links in the chat box. So feel free to review those. I would like to recognize ARMID CEO Margot Cathcart is with us today, and Michael Asante, our research and policy analyst. Unfortunately, regrets from Liza Park, our senior EDA. She serves the western and central region of the province. And we have Charlene Gulak, the EDA in the Parkland, Midwestern, and Interlake region of the province. Aaron Gonzalez, our executive assistant, is on. And now I'd like to ask Margot to introduce our newest employee at ARMID as a marketing coordinator. Margot, I'll just turn that over to you for a moment.
Thanks so much, Deanna, and welcome to everybody here, and a special welcome to Fumni. Fumni has recently joined us as our marketing and communications coordinator. She is on day 6 today and is already making a huge difference to the work that we're doing around the province. So stay tuned in the coming weeks. We're about to make a whole lot of noise, and I'm really excited with some of the things that Fumni already has in place. Fumni and her family have recently arrived in Brandon from Nigeria, and her background is communications, both on the enterprise side as well as on the agency side. And she brings with her experience with a number of international brands that you would recognize. So we are very lucky to have her coming and joining the team, and looking forward to seeing things happen in the near future. So reach out, say hi. Let's make her and her husband and her young son feel welcome and part of the economic development community in Manitoba. I also want to take an opportunity in advance to thank Noah for hosting this, and for all of his panelists. I really look forward to hearing your stories.
Great. Thanks, Margot. Now, let me just say a few words about our guest and moderator this morning, Noah Wilson. He is the Senior Business Development Manager for the Indigenous Entrepreneur Startup Program with Futurepreneur. Noah Wilson self-identifies as a Cree man with French-Ukrainian heritage on his mother's side of the family. Noah is a proud member of Peguis First Nation community in Manitoba. And as a result of living in several cities and communities throughout his youth, Noah is able to see a diverse cross-section of Canadian society that highlighted the stark discrepancies in the standard of living between First Nation people and the rest of Canada. These experiences have fostered his passion to make a difference, and he is a trusted advisor and an avid volunteer. Now, in recognition of Small Business Week, ARMID wants to express gratitude to our 3 entrepreneurs and any other business owners that are on the call today. We thank you for your dedication and contribution to our communities, as you are the background of our local economy. Our 3 Indigenous youth entrepreneurs will share their valuable insight, experiences, challenges, successes, and personal goals as they move into 2024. Now, Noah, I'm turning this hardworking group of entrepreneurs over to you.
Fantastic. I just say Chimagwech say thank you so much for this opportunity, and all the team at ARMID who helped put this together, and really proud to be able to be moderating today for Small Business Week with a panel of star-studded Indigenous entrepreneurs from our rural communities in Manitoba. And I think it's going to be great for the ecosystem to be able to hear the stories of these accomplished Indigenous entrepreneurs and their challenges, their successes, their growth, and the opportunities that lay ahead for them. And just really excited. So I like to introduce myself in the language when I can. So Bojo ni no Wilson Indigenous Cas Oshki Shkanaganing and Denjiba Wabshishi and no Dem. No Wilson from Peguas First Nation from the Martin Clan as well. So as I mentioned, we have a star-studded panel here, and I think in the spirit of Indigenous traditions, I think it's important that we all start off with the stories of our guests today, and in terms of a quick introduction from each one of them would be fantastic, and a little bit about their story, their business, and during Small Business Week, there's no such thing as a shameless plug. So make sure you highlight your own businesses as well. So I'm going to pass it over to Meg Poirier, who's the founder of Radical Movement Private Training Gym in Lorette, Manitoba. Would love an introduction from you, Megan, a little bit about your story, and so we can get to know you before we get started.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Megan Poirier, like you said. I have been a personal trainer for the past decade. I do online and in-person personal training. Recently, through the help of the Manitoba Métis Federation, Louis Riel Capital Corp, and of course, Futurepreneur, I was able to open my own private training space on our property out here just outside of Lorette, Manitoba. Yeah, so that's kind of been what I've been working on for the past couple of years. We went through a lot of hurdles to get here, but we finally were able to open in March, and things have been going really, really well ever since. So yeah, I'm just excited today to talk about everything that we've done in the past couple of years and how we got here and the challenges we overcame. And if you're looking to find me online, I spend a lot of time on Instagram under @trainradicalmovement, and of course my website www.trainradicalmovement.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to be passing it over to Lacey Marshall and some guests, some beautiful guests of hers as well. And she's the founder of the Ranch Tack and Feed in Alexander, Manitoba. Had the pleasure of working with her on her launch, and I know that she's put a ton of hard work. Was even laid up on the couch with an injury and still working on the business plan and relentless. So I'm excited to pass it over to Lacey and tell us a little bit about your story and your business, please, Lacey.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. This is very, very exciting. I am originally from Rapid City, and we decided that we were going to buy a tack store, and I didn't know how to make that happen or what to do. So I spent 2 years doing a lot of research on how to get it, and I found these programs, and we ended up buying a place in Alexander with a barn, and we put a store upstairs in the barn, and we've been in business now for 4 months, and I run it with my 2 little girls. We have a website, and it is theranchtackandfeed.com. You can stop and see us in store, or we are on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing, Lacey. And last but not least, my friend, my brother, Skylar Sanderson, also an entrepreneur I was lucky enough to work with, the founder of Young Visionary out of Dauphin, Manitoba. Passing it over to you, Skylar, to share a little bit about yourself, your story, and your business, my friend.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Chimagwech, for having me. My name is Skylar Sanderson. I'm the owner and operator of Young Visionary streetwear brand. I started Young Visionary in 2020 during the pandemic. Went to college for business, got a little bit of background in that, certainly helped with opening the business. Young Visionary offers outsourcing for other businesses. We sell streetwear blanks, and we also do motivational speaking. You could check out Young Visionary at youngvisionary.ca. Thank you.
Fantastic. Right on. So let's get right into it. I'm really excited about this conversation today, and being able to talk about your stories, as I mentioned. When we talk about entrepreneurship and, in the essence of Small Business Week, we really want to get to understand, and to any listeners out there, the experiences of entrepreneurs, especially Indigenous entrepreneurs. As much as that, there's the glory of getting a business launched and getting the doors open and being able to be a part of panels like this and sharing your story. Entrepreneurship can be hard, especially at the startup stage. There's challenges that have popped up that you never anticipated. There's funding challenges, how to access capital to get the equipment or the assets or the working capital that you need to get the business off the ground. The challenges are endless, and I think it's really important to talk about the resiliency that's needed to become an entrepreneur and really the tenacity that it takes to get open for business, so to speak. And I know all three of you have powerful stories of resiliency and tenacity to get the doors open. So I'd love to pass it over to the panel here, and maybe even Lacey. I know that you've had some challenges with having to pivot the business early on, delays in the launch. Do you want to share a little bit about that and how you're able to overcome that? And yeah, just share a little bit about some of the challenges it took you to turn into a success for you in your early stages of your business.
I think with moving my business, so with all of the research that I had done about Western stores and things like that, I knew that there was like a demand for it in my area. When asking for funding when you're buying a business is extremely, extremely hard, which I didn't know. I would have been better off to start my business from scratch and go that way. But I had already shook the lady's hand and said I was going to buy her business. So I still firmly believe in a handshake is your word, and I couldn't go back on that. And so I just kept pushing and kept pushing. I bought my house, or like the place where my business was going to go. I bought my business all within 4 hours of each other. Like I needed to buy my house or buy my barn in order to have a home for the business. So I needed it all to like fall into place, which was like extremely, extremely stressful. There was like hours where I didn't know where I had already bought the business. I didn't know where its home was going to be. And then trying to get everything, you don't really realize how many displays you need and how many, like more than what you've planned on paper, because real life is a lot crazier than
Yeah, so that's I think that's totally true. And like some of the story, like our conversations early on was, it's kind of like realizing what you're getting yourself into, and that can be really scary. So I think like having mentorship, having support systems around you is super important. Did you have a support system like that really helped you through getting through that challenging period, Lacey?
I have a super wonderful support system. My husband and my sister were very, very awesome at like questioning me on every decision I made in a good way. And then when I got to go through the Futurepreneur spreadsheet, that was one of the best things that I could have ever used. I go back on it weekly to see my numbers. Am I selling enough of I didn't understand it at the start, but I had to understand it if I was gonna sell it to my sister and sell it to my husband, and it took a while for me to learn that. I don't come from a business background. I didn't take any schooling for business. I started a couple of my own businesses making Western shirts and jewelry and things like that, but that was like on a small, small scale. This was on a huge, huge scale. So those were some really good aspects. Well, and I was on the phone with you pretty much once a day asking questions. It was nice to be able to ask questions and not feel stupid, basically. It was nice to feel like you mattered and like you were important and your questions were validated always.
Yeah. That's thank you for sharing that, because I think the planning stage of it and finding the right people to kind of work with is always important. But also like the self-doubt you have when you start a business. And Skylar, I wanted to ask you, being an extremely young person who's highly motivated, who has a great story and background, it definitely must have been challenging for you, to get the business off the ground and just to start testing it out. And when I first met you, you had already been testing the business, which I always say is one of the best ways to get started in terms of business, is just go out and do it. And when I met you about a year and a half ago, you were speaking in front of a crowd of Métis youth around your story. But I know one of the challenges that you had early on was, shifting from outsourcing production to in-house production with clothing equipment early on. But do you want to share us a little bit about that challenge, like even when you got your equipment and some other challenges that you faced when you got off the ground? Anything you can share with us is great.
Yeah, definitely. So within some of the equipment I acquired earlier this year, it was a screen printer and an embroidery machine. So my first issues came with the embroidery machine. It wasn't until about 2 months after I had got it that it was actually running perfectly. And then when it started running, I had to get used to it. So therefore, I ruined a couple t-shirts and hoodies in the process, but it's all a part of the learning process, right? And then so with the printer, I bought it from China, so it's a 12-hour clock difference. So they don't start work until 8 a.m. So it's 8 p.m. our time. So I was up like later in the night. I wake up at 4 a.m. most mornings. So I had long days waiting to just deal with them during the evening. But yeah, it's just all about going through with it and sticking to it. And then once you finally get things figured out, you kind of look back at it and it just makes you smile, makes you laugh, because it maybe it was easy, maybe it just took a little bit of repetition.
Yeah, no, and just watching you kind of grow, and I mean the quality of your clothing is outstanding. I got a whole sweatsuit recently, and you can really see that there's a lot of time that went into the details of getting your clothing right. Megan, I know that in terms of us having a chance to talk over the length of your business and some of the challenges, certainly there's been many with getting your business open for business, and really just proud of your tenacity and your ability to persevere through those times. But do you want to share us the unexpected things that come with launching a business, and how setbacks created challenges, loan facilities, things like this that we were discussing earlier?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I also resonate a lot with kind of what Lacey was saying earlier about like I have a lot of experience with training. I've been training for almost a decade, but when it came to finally stepping out of just contracting with other gyms and being an independent contractor to wanting to open my own business, there was a lot of other challenges that came with it. And I'll get into the the renovation challenges that came with that, but even just like learning how to write a business plan, learning how to do cash flow projections, learning how to apply for permits, learning how to hire contractors. Like there were so many things that I was so inexperienced with coming into it that everything took a lot longer than I thought that it was going to. So that was frustrating right from the get-go. And I mean, I planned to be open like a year and a half prior to when we actually opened. And then there was like a deadline of, okay, I'm opening 2022, August 31st, like absolute deadline. And we ended up opening in March of 2023. So there's a lot of things that happened between like when we started writing that business plan and when me and you met, and when we finally opened. But yeah, it was definitely, there was a lot of ups and downs. Finding contractors and getting contractors to take me seriously and even showing up to do the work was a real struggle. For so long we got kind of pushed off, and they said they were coming and they said they were coming and they would never show up. And it got to the point where actually my husband and one of our friends said, you know what, we're just going to do this. And they did the full gut and renovation of our gym. And it was like, it was a grind, because we had about a month before winter was going to hit, and we had to swap out all the windows. We had to redo the siding. We completely redid the inside, re-insulated and put up drywall. And yeah, they did everything, and it was crazy, but we finally got it done, and it was a trip for sure.
Yeah, like that's so frustrating. And I think when we talk about Indigenous entrepreneurship, that's one thing, the barriers and the extra kind of red tapes that we have to go through as Indigenous entrepreneurs. But even amongst women, entrepreneurs, women in business, I think there's additional barriers and challenges and that women face, and especially Indigenous women. Lacey and Megan, there maybe you could pick up on that. Megan is some of the challenges that maybe you faced or barriers that you faced with just being a woman in business. And I think it's important for our ecosystem to understand the challenges that our women face, the due respect that they deserve, and sometimes they don't always get. So I think it's important that we kind of bring that up to you and pull on that thread a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been working in a relatively male-dominated industry for the past 9 years, so I've dealt with that in my industry several times, and have left gyms and gone to new gyms because of it. I wasn't expecting to be my own general contractor, so when that kind of role ended up falling on my head, yeah, it was frustrating because even if I pick up the phone to call someone, they don't take me quite as seriously, I think, as when my husband would pick up the phone and call them, and that was frustrating. And just having someone tell you, yeah, I'm going to be there this day, this time, and then that day comes and goes and they don't show up, and you're like, what's going on? So I had to take off my nice personality of being a personal trainer and working with people who appreciate me and who respect me, to having to get some dirt under my nails and be a little bit more aggressive when it came to getting people to come and show up and do the work. And I didn't like being that person, but at the end of the day, I kind of just had to be, because that was how they listened and how I got things done.
Yeah, and I don't think it's sad that even had to come to place, but I think it just speaks to you and just kind of your character and your ability to kind of get things done, and when push comes to shove. So but Lacey, do you have anything to add to that? Is there any stories that you want to share with us about some of the things we should be aware of in terms of being advocates and not standing by while these things happen in terms of our ecosystem here?
I agree with everything Megan said. I find being a mother for me is a big struggle. There has been many of times when I am holding my girls upstairs while I'm trying to ring somebody through, and how can you be taken as serious as a man standing behind the counter that is, doesn't have to change a diaper or look pretty? Because if you don't look pretty, then I really struggle with that part of it being taken serious. I am painting my child's nails right now while I'm trying to be on a video chat to describe my business. So I always feel like always feel like I'm having to work twice as hard as, say, a man sitting on this. But I will say I am very, very lucky to I have my kids with me all the time, and very lucky to be able to do that and raise them how I want them to be raised, and making it normal that there's snacks on the floor in my store, but that's real life. That happens. And I really feel like things like that need to be more normal. And if you want to come shopping in my store, bring your kids, because I have a play area in the corner so that it can make it easier for you. I want that to be normal for things, because it is a struggle being a mom, being a woman, being an entrepreneur, all of the things. But making these things normal is what I think needs to be addressed more. And to be how you said, I had to take this nice face off and be rude, or not rude, but be somebody I didn't want to be to get what I want, which is sad to me. Why shouldn't you be able to pick up the phone and be like, hey, can you come today at 3? Yeah, I'll be there at 3, and then show up, because that's what I'm doing. I'm showing up. I'm taking the time to show up. So
yeah, and I also find that even as a woman, the second that you do kind of put your foot down and you are a little bit more aggressive to get what you want, you're labeled as mean, or there's other words that you can use for that. But yeah, it's not like when a guy is aggressive, it's just oh, they're just getting it done, they're just being the man. But as soon as a woman does it, it's looked down upon as well, which was frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about, Indigenous communities, like we are matriarchal communities. Like our women are our leaders of our communities,
Hmm.
and I just want to commend you both for trailblazing because I mean these stories are so important because we don't know who's going to be listening to this, and it's just these stories of resiliency that both of you are sharing with us. But you're also trailblazing for like the next group of Indigenous women entrepreneurs to come up behind you, which I think is super powerful. And the more that we have our Indigenous women in business and in leadership in our communities, I think that it's just going to lead to the growth of our communities because women are the core of our communities because our youth are the core of our communities as well. But Margo, is there something you wanted to say as well?
I just wanted to add that as a woman that was an entrepreneur and led a pretty non-traditional career, I applaud what your families are doing and the experience that your kids are going to have, having a deeper relationship with their dads because you are doing other things. And the role modeling that comes with both of those is incredible. So congratulations.
Yeah. And I also think it's beautiful, Lacey, that like you're literally like taking family-owned business and like making it a reality in your shop, which I think is the case for a lot of our Indigenous entrepreneurs. But kind of getting back to and wrapping up this kind of train of thought here with challenges and accessing capital in terms of being an Indigenous entrepreneur. Skylar, did you want to share anything around just not only accessing capital but like managing it once you get it? And I think Lacey, you have a little bit of a note on this too. Is like when you access capital, you're at the first, you're like, how much do I get? What's the balance? Like once you get it, what do you do with it? Right? It's a part of the business plan, but as we all know, it's like things are dynamic and change even after you write your business plan. But Skylar, do you want to share a little bit about some of the challenges you had once you actually got the funds to get your equipment and all these things and the challenges that come with operating your business?
Yeah, for sure. So once I had received the funding, I obviously needed to buy my equipment first. With owning a clothing store, you also need the clothing as well. So with the way I run Young Visionary is I drop my clothing capsules 4 times a year. So it's seasonal, spring, summer, fall, and winter, just to give my customers a little bit more selection. So also with that, you have to think about how much you're spending for each clothing capsule. You also have to worry about marketing. You also have to worry about your overhead because that stuff doesn't go away, unfortunately. But yeah, it's just planning 2 to 3 months, maybe even 4 months ahead, so that that next capsule is going off without a hitch, and then you could move into the next one and just keep things flowing. So paying attention to your capital, making sure you have it enough put aside to like just for comfortability, right? Just in case you need to get something done. It's very important.
Yeah, and I think Lacey and everyone around the circle here, in terms of our, the cash flows that you would have been working through to get the funding, we always highlighted, the fact of having, working capital and having cash on hand to pivot or when delays happen, and sometimes you can underestimate that in terms of the amount of capital you need, and that's one of the biggest killers of business within its first couple of years is undercapitalization. And Lacey, I think you have a story or like just kind of a insight we were talking about the other day around not realizing how much capital you needed to kind of for these nuanced expenses or buying inventory. I think Skylar, you're mentioning that is having to plan months ahead of time in terms of the operating cycles of your business. But do you want to add to that a little bit, Lacey, as well?
I think so the biggest thing that I learned that I did not think of when I bought this business, so I'm like trying to build my business, expand my business. So bringing in a lot of new products. So with those products, it's usually between a five and $10,000 buy-in with those products. But that's something that I didn't really think about when I was asking for working capital because it is so I buy that product today and then I have at least 4 weeks before I see the product on new products, and then 6 to 8 weeks before I'm seeing the return on that. So in that time, if I'm ordering new, that's $5,000 that is basically tied up for 6 to 8 weeks, which is not, I didn't think big picture when I was starting in that aspect. I was thinking about like my day to day and my how am I going to replenish what I already have, not adding. I have added 15 new lines with my own money, and it is taken like it's like penny to penny. But if I would have known what I know now, I would have had a little bit more working capital, and it definitely would have made my job a lot easier and a little bit less stressful. So I went 35% more than what I thought I needed. I would for sure go at least 65% more than what I thought I needed, which would be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because I mean, when you talk about working capital, I mean, the reality is as new business owners, you're going to make mistakes. Like you're going to be learning on the job. Like you're you know, things as a startup business, it's exactly what it sounds like. You know, you're starting out, you're getting going. So I think having working capital on hand allows you to make those mistakes, makes those learning mistakes, allows you to pivot, and allows you to kind of you know, make those decisions and have the time to do that. But on that note, I mean, I think we should also celebrate our successes. I mean, for as much challenges that all three of you have had in terms of getting your businesses off the ground, open for business, I think let's focus on some of the successes that you've had in terms of the enormous hurdles you've had to overcome to be open for business. And yeah, so do you want to share any stories, Lacey? I mean, we were just talking about this other day about, you know, talking about the cash flows and our projections and things like this. I think you had a special moment recently, despite all the challenges with inventory and whatnot. Do you want to share with us a little bit about that? Because I think we'd all love to celebrate that and hear the success story you've had recently.
So when I first started this and I looked at that cash flow sheet, it's at $100,000 on it. And I did not believe in myself enough that I could get to that 100,000. And we started selling in June of this year. And 2.5 weeks ago, we just hit our 100,000. And this past week, I have $5 more thousand and I will hit my 150,000 we're at 4 months now. So it's like a big moment. I did not ever think that like I could see those numbers. Like, and it is gross sales, but I never ever thought that I would be able. I am just one person running a business that this is like makes me tear up. But like, there's a lot of people who did not believe I could do this, and close people to me, my family.
Mm-hmm.
They second guess me. They're like, this is really risky. This is really risky. You know, you don't know what you're doing. All of the things that they doubted me and doubted me. And finally, I would like to just like you'd love to shout it from the rooftops, like, boo, yeah, I did it. I hit those numbers that in 4 months. Like not, it didn't take me 2 years. It took me 4 months to hit those numbers. And that was a big moment for me.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, it literally gives me goosebumps thinking about it because I remember us just talking about this idea of you getting this business and now you're running it and you're reaching these sales goals. I mean, even though we were being, you know, conservative in the projections, you know, we get happy surprises when you're crushing it within 4 months of your 12-month projections, which is amazing and just a testament to your resiliency. And I think it's important that you bring up around the doubt that that not only do we have as, you know, as entrepreneurs and but like also around us. So I think it's important for us to realize that. But I also think that's a great reason why like small business owners are the bedrock of our economy. Like they provide jobs, they provide income to our economy, and the risks they take to start these businesses, like you can't help but respect that. But Megan, I know it's been a challenge for you to get off the ground, and we were discussing the other day around just like the successes you've also had in launching your business. And I think you had some really interesting insights, especially, you know, since we're, you know, rural Manitoba economic development lens here, and all of you are rural entrepreneurs or based in rural settings, you know, making sales isn't as straightforward as being in a metropolitan Winnipeg where you have, you know, thousands of cars driving down the street every day. So like the testament that all of you are actually making these sales goals and crushing them is like, number one, just amazing and incredible. I think it's something that should inspire other folks around, around our rural communities. But Megan, can you share a little bit more about the strategies you've had to, number one, share your success story, please. I want to know. You've been through so much the last little while. And then share us, like, what were some of the strategies for helping you to kind of reach those sales goals and marketing in rural Manitoba?
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing this business plan, I was still living in Winnipeg. I was working full time as a trainer in Winnipeg, and we hadn't even bought our house yet. And kind of much like Lacey, we actually bought this house because of the outbuilding that was on the property, and because I knew I wanted to open a gym in rural Manitoba. So I had a flourishing business in Winnipeg already, but none of those clients were going to be driving the 40 minutes from where my other gym was to come and train out here several times a week. So I knew that when we were going to be opening this gym, I was going to have to be starting from scratch, being new to a new community, not really knowing anyone kind of in this area yet, and then trying to build a clientele off of people not knowing who I am yet. So that was definitely a big challenge and a big risk that I knew that I was heading into when we did start this all. But it was crazy because things got pushed back so far and things were so crazy during the renovation process that when it finally got to the point where we were going to open the doors, I was like, oh, oh crap, I haven't put in the work yet to like gain that local clientele. So I just kind of hit the ground running. And I mean, I use social media a lot, so that was really great. And then I knew a girl who was a physiotherapist in town. And so I hit her up and was like, hey man, like, let's trade services, let's show each other what we can do, and let's start referring some clients to each other, and kind of built off there. And within a month, it was crazy. Like, one person would refer to somebody else and then refer to someone else and tell their family and tell their friends. And I just think that when you provide a really solid service and you really care about what you do and you're really passionate about the service that you provide, that it'll show. And I mean, word of mouth has been my biggest way of gaining clients at this point, and they just keep coming. And it's really incredible in a small community or in rural Manitoba. I think people are going to listen to their friends and family before they're going to listen to a radio ad or listen to something else, or, listen to Google, what Google tells them is the best person for them. So I think just, building those relationships and just providing a really banger service is going to be what's going to help new entrepreneurs kind of open up and start in rural Manitoba.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, because I always talk about like the most effective marketing strategies are those like relationship-based strategies, and you making a strategic alliance with a local trusted professional in the community, sounds like it did wonders. And you just kind of getting boots on the ground and building those relationships. I think it matters even that much more in rural Manitoba. So I think that's such a powerful piece of advice for newer entrepreneurs coming into the game, so to speak, to just kind of go out and build those relationships, and it kind of creates those conversations in the community. And I think your warm spirit and character and just ability to deliver on a good experience for them just leads to more customers. So thanks for sharing that. I think honestly, with entrepreneurs I work with, I'm like, relationship-based strategies are the fastest ways to build trust with clients or customers. And as you mentioned, like, versus like a marketing ad that comes at your face, you're kind of always hesitant, but when you get to see a face, when you get to get a referral from someone you already trust, it goes like that much further in terms of checking out what your business is all about. So huge advice for our community here. I think in terms of other success stories, Skylar, I kind of met you like you were already like an up and coming success story in the ecosystem, if I might say myself, in terms of like inspiring young Métis and First Nation youth in your local community. In fact, I sat down at the table with you, I think it was at the Northwest Métis Economic Development Summit, right after the pandemic, I believe, speaking of challenges for entrepreneurs, right? But I think it's really powerful how you're incorporating, your Indigenous heritage or your Indigenous story into your business. And in terms about, some of the events earlier this year, we checked out, the spirit of economic reconciliation, the skate competition you had in Dauphin earlier this year, which I think you should share about. But also just kind of, the powerful, like just how you're able to integrate your Métis culture in terms of like that being a part of your identity in your business as well.
Yeah, so I started viewing my successes throughout these past 3 years a lot differently. When I first started out Young Visionary, I thought success was going to be becoming a millionaire and making sure my mom had a nice car and like a big house and a deck that she wants. That's what success was to me. Now it's all about how much I could give back, putting smiles on people's faces and just doing stuff like that, doing the work that I'm doing right now. So yeah, like Noah was saying, I met him during a speech with Northwest Métis, had no clue who he was. There was so much room at other tables and he came and sat by me and we hit it off, and now I consider him my brother. So starting 3 years ago in 2020, I was only 19 years old. I started the business during the pandemic. So now looking at it, everything that's happened in between those 3 years is actually, it's been amazing. Noah also mentioned the skateboard competition that I put on this past summer. That was truly amazing. I'm not a skateboarder myself. I own a streetwear brand, that's it. But it's a cool community of people. It was fun to see some kids come out there, have fun, get some cool prizes. Also, like, I came from Waterhen. It's a town of about 200 people. So I've now had the opportunity to speak to that amount of people in one room. I've also had the opportunity of going back to my hometown in Waterhen and speaking to the kids at the school. So those very halls that I walked in, those very seats that I sat in, it was a cool opportunity to come into the school and share my story and like my success with them. And it was cool to see some of their ideas that they had and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for the rest of our Indigenous entrepreneurs. I want to share one more story. Actually, it just came to me. I recently made a speech at Powwow Pitch in Winnipeg this past summer, and once I got down from the stage, older gentleman came up to me and he said how much that my speech impacted him, and he told me that he was incarcerated for about half of his life, and that was about 15-20 years he was incarcerated. And I'm standing there right in front of him, and it made me think, like, I'm only 22 years old. He's spent his life in prison. You know what? He may have done things wrong, but beside the fact. So for me to impact somebody like that, and it still hits me, like it's very cool.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen the impact that you've been making in the ecosystem, and just kind of we were talking about trailblazing earlier, but just as a young person, as young as you are, to be making these waves and creating community-led events. And I think that speaking of integrating Indigenous values into our business models, I think every one of us have talked about it today, is around community. Megan, you were talking about getting out in the community. Skylar, your metrics of success are based around community. Lacey, you just bringing family, like intertwining that within your business. And we were talking about all the traveling you're doing and all the community, like the community within the tuck and equine industry itself. I think it's beautiful. But in terms of Skylar, I did want to mention something with the skate competition, because you're extremely humble. So the skate competition was amazing. I was there myself. It was in Dauphin, Manitoba, and it was actually a collaboration between Recovery Skates, skateboards in Brandon, Manitoba, Tabor Collins, who's also a futurepreneur, entrepreneur of ours, and Skylar. And it was a beautiful melody of bringing a non-Indigenous entrepreneur with an Indigenous entrepreneur. And you talk about economic reconciliation and building relationships. It was beautiful to see that. Brought a bunch of really amazing local skateboarders to the Dauphin skate park, and even was supporting local musicians and artists which were there. So it was like, literally, like, you talk about community event, it was awesome. Like, it was one of my favorite days of this summer. Just like good vibes all around. And yeah,
I'm gonna plug that. It's an annual event. It's an annual event now, you guys. So in July 22nd it was this year. So next year, Dauphin, come through. Gonna be food vendors, gonna be music, gonna be a lot of skateboarding, gonna be a lot of fun as well.
Let's go. It's only getting bigger. No, it was a blast. Like, honestly, it was such a good time. And to be honest, like, I used to skateboard back in the day. I was like, I brought my skateboard. I like ripped around the skateboard a little bit. Yeah, I scraped my knee though, so I can't dance with the youngins like I used to. But yeah, and I mean, and this could be open to the floor too. Is how has being a business owner impacted your personal growth and development? Like, what motivates you to keep going? Is it kind of the relationships you're building, like, or is it, client successes that you're helping out with, Megan? Like, tell us a little bit more about what kind of keeps you motivated, because there's those days that it's tough to get out of bed, and you're your own boss, right? You're the only one doing that, right? So can you share with us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, my schedule is insane. I train clients from 6 a.m. usually till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I don't sleep a lot these days. So yeah, it's definitely, you need some internal motivation. I find right now it's coming, like, the people that I've attracted to my gym and the people that I get to work with are really, really cool people. It makes me a little bit emotional because I've never had such an amazing clientele before. And these people are not just my clients, they're my friends. And to see them grow and succeed every day is really amazing. So yeah, that's definitely what gets me out of bed in the morning, is just like the community that I've started to build, the people that I get to work with, and watching them succeed is really exciting. And I know that my schedule won't always be this crazy. I told myself I was just gonna go insane for the next year, and yeah, just really try to grind it out. But yeah, it's going really well. So I'm happy, and you don't really need a lot of motivation when things are going like this. So it's good.
Well, that's amazing. And but one thing I always say to my entrepreneurs is, like, you're always the most important resource to your business. It's so important to take care of yourself as well as in the mix of it all. But the reality is, you got to get things done in the startup years, and I think it's important to be honest about that, as a new entrepreneur. So thanks so much for your vulnerability and just like sharing your honest and unfiltered story. And Lacey and Skylar, is there anything you wanted to add to that in terms of, like, those things that keep you motivated, or that thing that keeps you looking forward? Yeah, is there anything you want to add to that as well?
Yeah, I could add to it for sure. Sorry, you know what? I'll let you go first while I think a little bit more.
I think it's the same thing. The relationships that I have built in this business just in a short amount of time, people, sending messages like, "You're doing great, Lace, you're doing great." And then I wake up every single morning, sorry, and I see my little girls, and they truck out to the barn with me every morning. That's what keeps me going, is knowing that, like, I stepped out of my comfort zone and I am actually doing it, and they're standing there watching me. They're watching me fail. They're watching me succeed. They're watching me try again. And that's important to me.
Literally, I have a response. Like, I'm getting choked up right now, because, like, the thing is, behind the scenes, like, most people don't know what entrepreneurs go through and the risks they take, and it's a family affair. Business is a family affair, right? Like, everyone has to be on board. We talk about, preparing your family, preparing relationships to get an entrepreneurship, and the sacrifices we all make to do that. And I think it's just beautiful, the example you're setting for your daughters, and just being able to see your perseverance, and you, like, setting something out, and I think, I'm just like, you talk about rural Manitoba and that tenacity of, like, rural Manitobans, and you making a handshake and you're like, I'm sticking to it. Like, isn't that, like, that is like Manitoba in its essence, right? And Skylar, like, in terms of, like, we were talking about earlier, and just something that came to mind is just, like, your trajectory. We were talking about, like, where, how you're, like, when you started in high school, or when you kind of, like, were growing up, and like, I mean, you're still growing up, you're still a young man.
Yeah.
But, like, you can think about, like, still thinking about like, the trajectory you've taken, and how that's changed your life since you decided to take this more seriously. Do you want to share a little bit about that? And you already mentioned earlier, you're already inspiring Indigenous and rural youth in Dauphin surrounding areas. So I think that's something that definitely I want to highlight.
Yeah, for sure. This isn't news that I've ever shared publicly before. So here it is. When I was younger in high school, I was selling drugs. I was involved with the wrong people. I was really headed down the wrong path. I almost failed grade 12. I didn't know where I was going. Like, stuff just was not right, with my home life, with school life, with everything, right? Like, I was just running around like a chicken with its head cut off, like, with no guidance. And after high school, I thankfully graduated. I have a great family around me. Went to college, opened up the business, and it helped me get away from that. Now working on sobriety. So within these 3 years, like I've came so far. I wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. I meditate, I read, I write. So I'm doing all of these things to look after my mental and my physical health after neglecting it for so many years. So I owe a lot to Young Visionary. I literally owe my life. It saved me.
Wise beyond his years, if you ask me. And I think, you know, you talk about Indigenous values, the seven sacred teachings, you know, one of them being honesty. And I think there's this pressure for entrepreneurs just to be this like polished, perfect person all the time, can't be vulnerable, impenetrable. And I think that's so not like the direction we need to go. We need to show that we're human. We need to show that we've all like overcome challenges in our life. And I think all of you have like really provided a powerful experience for all of our guests today. And that honesty, it takes a lot of courage not only to launch a business, it takes a lot of courage to be honest, you know, as you're launching a business as well. So just want to acknowledge just the courage, the resiliency, you know, the tenacity that all of you have in terms of like where you are today. And we're all going to be rooting for you and plugging you wherever we can in terms of your services. You know, as we're closing up here, is there any, you know, last words of advice that you would give to a young Indigenous entrepreneur or a young woman entrepreneur who's thinking about starting their own business? What kind of advice would you provide for someone? Maybe I'll pass it over to you, Megan, to close us off here.
Yeah. Create a plan, set a goal, but I mean, when push comes to shove, nothing ever goes as planned, and don't be scared to ball that plan up and throw it out the window and pivot when you need to. And just keep moving forward. I mean, you learn the greatest lessons and you grow the most on the hardest days. And yeah, that's where your success is going to come from. So don't be scared to just embrace the hard days and lean into your mentorship, lean into the people that are supporting you, and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's powerful. There was a saying I looked at recently, and it said, you know, the principle of a journey is taking one small step after the other, and I think all of you have done that. So, Chima, much for sharing that. Lacey, is there anything that you would give advice to a young entrepreneur, or an Indigenous or a woman entrepreneur as they have those doubts and people are doubting them? Like, what would you say to them? How did they overcome that? How did you overcome that? Like, I'm so excited just by this conversation today.
I really think just do it. Just do it. Call me. My phone number, my email's on there. Like, if you need a person to like, because this was my biggest problem. I didn't know where to source these things. Then I stepped onto you, and it was like, here's this wonderful world of resources that can help lift you up and get you to where you want to be. Don't quit. And just, it doesn't matter if you're got all the cards stacked up against you that it's not going. They told me 3 times that I was not going to get the money, the funding for this business. I am looking at this business right now and it's fully functional. You're going to get told no. You're going to get told that's crazy, but just keep pushing, keep making plans, keep changing them, keep growing, but do it. Take the first step. And it might not work out, and that's okay. It's okay if it doesn't work out, but take that first step and don't let things like, for me, it was being a mother. You know, I am a little bit older, like to switch careers. I had done the same thing my whole entire life, graduated with being a hairdresser. That's all I really did. Just do it. Take the step. If you fail, it's okay.
Great advice. And I think one thing I talk about with entrepreneurs a lot is like, you're never going to look back and say, what if, right? Like all of the lessons that you've learned. You're going to go through the process. Even if you create a whole business plan and decide not to get launched, or it's just not the right decision, you're not going to look back and say, what if? And talking about ecosystem and resources, I think with RMED being around in rural Manitoba, you know, boots on the ground, you know, definitely reach out to RMED, because RMED is connected with Futurepreneur and so many other ecosystem partners. They're going to be able to make sure that they're tapped into rural Manitoba to make sure that a Lacey or a Megan or a Skylar aren't falling through the cracks, and that we're supporting those entrepreneurs. So really happy to be partnering with RMed going forward, and I know that they're going to be a huge resource for entrepreneurs in rural Manitoba. Skylar, any last words for a young Indigenous entrepreneur or a young man in university or a high school and unsure of what pathway he's going to go, and who knows, like next thing you know, he's launching a business, living a sober life, being an inspiring young man for others. Like, how do we make more of Skylars? Like, that's my question in our communities. Like, tell me, Mike.
All I could say is this life's a lot better than the life I was living. So I'm grateful. I'm honored. Nothing's gonna be easy, but if it was easy, everybody would do it. I like being in that top percentage of people that do it. I've turned my words into reality. I've everything that I planned to do, I've made it come to fruition. I had a lot of different dreams growing up. I wanted to be a firefighter first. I wanted to be a sports therapist. My grades didn't agree with that. And then I wanted to be a football player because I seen nothing left. And then still every morning I wake up and my dream's still coming true. So, I mean, even though some stuff doesn't work out, it's not the end. There's still tomorrow, there's still next week, next month, next year. So don't give up, pursue whatever you want to do. Make sure that you're happy. Happiness is key. Make sure that you're doing something that you enjoy doing. Make sure that your job isn't work or your work isn't a job. Make sure that it's just fun for you, and that's what it is for me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This was all gold, because like literally I was talking to an entrepreneur the other day. It's like, you got to be passionate about what you do. Like, passion is what's gonna get you through those dark days, as Megan was mentioning, and helping you lean into it. So you gotta love what you do and do what you love. And I think entrepreneurship is a pathway to get there. Is it going to be pretty all the time? Absolutely not. Are you going to face hurdles? Absolutely. But it takes that entrepreneurial spirit to push through. And I think as Indigenous peoples, as in women in business, we have that inherent resiliency and embedded in us, just through our own lived experiences. So just want to say Chimegwech Ekose, thank you so much for just being honest with us, being truthful, sharing your stories, and I think I just feel I'm just leaving here so much more inspired and just loving the work I do. Speaking of loving the work, but yeah, I don't know if there's any last questions or anything that the crowd wanted to ask, or if we're wanting to wrap up. I know we're getting to the end of the hour here. We got 3 busy entrepreneurs too, so
Yes.
just want to close off here.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, Megan and Lacey and Skylar. And your inspiring words, of course, are very heartfelt. And I agree with you. Find those business relationships and the opportunity to grow even further, like you've mentioned. And you are risk takers. They say the biggest risk takers are entrepreneurs. And I was an entrepreneur and I enjoyed every moment of it, even with my kids in tow, Lacey. Totally understand that concept for sure. But, and again, the best opportunity to grow is word of mouth and those direct contacts that you have with others. Margot, you have a thought or a question?
I just wanted to thank everybody for being here with their inspirational stories. Like Noah, days like this and conversations like this are what inspire me to go on and do what we do at RMed, and to be there. I can appreciate all of the challenges of startup. RMed's 2 years old, and the whole how do we make this work is something that I've lived as an entrepreneur, and I've lived in starting up RMed. And so please reach out. It's really important that we're here to be able to support you in everything that you do and continue to inspire people. You want to wave hi to everybody? Please, what your daughter's name is. Do you want to wave hi to everybody?
This is community right now in action.
Next entrepreneur.
My little one was on my knee as well. And you know what, if people are not prepared to celebrate that with you, then that's on them, not on you.
Thank you, Noah, for moderating. for us today. That was fabulous. And also just wanted to make a note of our next webinar coming up, which will be November the 9th. And that's Risk Management Marketing with Ken Latander. And also go to our website if you want to learn more about RMID, and you'll find our pathfinding tools and our resource library. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.